Saturday afternoon, start to get some tweets that there's a billboard up on the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, unofficial home of the UFC, with Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane's faces up there. And it says March 4th, UFC 285. And at first I looked at it and I was like, is this a Photoshop? But then I saw a video of it. I was like, well, that's weird. Now, when I saw that, wasn't going like, oh my God, this is crazy. Where did this come from? Out of the blue. As we told you last Wednesday, Jon Jones is ready to go. And if Jon Jones is ready to go, you got to give him a fight. And he was ready to go for December 10th. And so they were looking at all their options. Option number one was Francis Ngannou. And I told you there was the contract and there was the knee. Now, I also said that I thought push comes to shove, he would end up re-signing with the UFC because the CAA roadblock, if you will, was no longer there. And I was feeling more confident based on what I was hearing, but it obviously wasn't a done deal. And I also said that the knee needed to be 100%. And I said that if he wasn't 100% or if he had not re-signed, the next guy down the line would be Stipe Miocic. And as was said Saturday night by UFC President Dana White, he was brought up but not ready to go. And so the next guy would be Ciryl Gane. And I think it was on Thursday we saw a tweet from Ciryl Gane, who was in Las Vegas to corner Nassourdine Imavov, saying like, where are you at, John? And when I saw that, I was like, all right, something's going on here. He's not just tweeting this out of the blue. I know that he has a special Jon Jones clause in his contract. And, his name had been bandied about for a minute. And, he would be, I think, on the pecking order, one above Curtis Blaydes, comes off the big win in France, in Paris. UFC likes him. He has fought for a belt before, almost exactly a year ago. It made sense. So when I saw all of that, I was like, all right, this makes sense. Then I find out that it wasn't quite 100%, but it was like literally at the goal line, like Ravens, Bengals at the goal line, if you know what I'm saying. But there was one or two things they had to work out. And if they did, they would announce it Saturday night. All right, so we wait and see. And what happened? They announced it Saturday night. Immediately after the event was over, Dana White comes up there, doesn't really say much about the event, and there wasn't a ton to say, some good performances here or there, but that was obviously the news that everyone was talking about. Comes out and just lays it all out there. Lays out that on March 4th, Ciryl Gane will fight Jon Jones for the vacant UFC heavyweight title, that they're no longer in business with Francis Ngannou, that they are not going to match any offers for him, that they are taking the belt away from him, and they essentially wish him the best in his future endeavors. They said a lot more, and we'll get into that, all of that in a moment. And so Jon Jones is back fighting at heavyweight, finally. First heavyweight fight. We haven't seen him since February of 2020 when he beat Dominic Reyes. And he's fighting Ciryl Gane. Certainly not choice number one, but a great fight, a huge fight, and one that I'm super, super interested in, of course. He also announced, by the way, that Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3 is official for March 18th. So those are two pay-per-views in the span of 2 weeks. That's going to be at the O2 in London. And we're also getting on that card Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev, which is an insane, incredible, sure to be fight of the year contender in the co-main event spot. That's for the March 18th card. Said nothing else about March 4th. All right. So this is gigantic news. This is massive news. In so many ways. Jon Jones is coming back. Jon Jones is coming back as a heavyweight. Jon Jones is fighting for a vacant title, not an interim. And he's fighting against the guy who didn't hold the belt. He's fighting against Ciryl Gane. He's not fighting Stipe Miocic. He's not fighting Francis. And oh, by the way, Francis Ngannou is a quote-unquote free man. And it appears, at least for now, that his UFC career is over. There's a lot to unpack here, and I want to unpack it all. And as we've liked to do over the last year or so, we don't just like to sit here and unpack it all and tell you the truth based off stuff off the top of our dome. We like to show receipts. We like to show proof. We like to show video and sometimes text, written, tweet evidence to back up the things that we are saying. And so let us do that here. Sit back, relax, and let us enjoy this. Because I have to say, watching that press conference on Saturday, look, there was a part of me, we can't shy away from the fact the last time we were here on Wednesday, we dissected a Dana White press conference. And as the days went on afterwards, I kind of think, and I know a lot of people would disagree with me, I kind of think that we kind of went easy on him in that press conference. Looking back on it, and especially the, what do you want me to do? Go away? This hurts them more than it hurts me. All that is some of the most narcissistic stuff that I've ever seen out of the head of anything in a public forum ever. I mean, it's really amazing when you sit back and you strip away who he is, his influence, like just to sit there and be like, it would hurt them more than it hurts me if you punish me in any way, is some next level narcissism. And there was a part of me that thought, all right, as a result of all of this, because, when you're a narcissist, you don't really truly understand or acknowledge that, I think. And so I wondered if, as a result of all of this, having to talk about something very sensitive, having to talk about something embarrassing, as he put it, I thought maybe that would bring a little humility to Dana White. Maybe this would mean he won't rule with the same kind of iron fist as he has in the past. And he wouldn't do things like he did on Saturday night. Guess what? I was wrong about that. 1,000% wrong, because that press conference on Saturday was very hard to watch. And what is the word to even use? Disgraceful, pitiful, embarrassing, inaccurate, uncomfortable. What is the best word? I don't even know. I really don't. Because what they were doing in that moment, in that press conference, if you want to be truly honest with yourself, was trying to hurt the man on his way out, trying to hurt his leverage, trying to hurt his position, trying to damage him on the way out. This isn't new. We saw this with Nathan Diaz most recently, and we've seen it dating back to Randy Couture and so many others. Trying to hurt someone on the way out, trying to hurt their position, their negotiation power, their leverage on the way out. That's what that was. Because it was a very easy way to do the whole dance on Saturday. A very easy, clean, classy way to do it. The complete opposite happened. And so to truly understand all of this, you really have to go back to truly understand all this, you really have to go back to July of 2018. July of 2018 is when we saw Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis fight at T-Mobile Arena in one of the worst fights of all time. They never got going. Derek was injured. Francis said that, he was still a little bit gun shy from the loss to Stipe. Afterwards, Dana White held a press conference, as he usually does, and he had this to say 4.5 years ago about Francis Ngannou. Take a look.
You talked briefly about the co-main event, but to you, just thoughts on Francis Ngannou. I mean, he had so much momentum behind him going into the Stipe fight, shows the flaws in his game a little bit, then comes back and has this fight where he throws, 17 strikes the entire fight, something like that. Where do you feel a guy like that goes from here?
Horrible. I think that, he had a pretty quick rise here, and obviously the fight over Alistair Overeem, catapulted him. Everybody was talking about him. I thought he was going to be the next guy. I think his ego ran away with him big time. I can tell you that his ego absolutely did run away with him. And the minute that happens to you in the fight game, you see what happens. You start to fall apart. I had some personal encounters with him, as did other people in the organization. And this guy's ego just was so out of control. It's like, before the Stipe fight, he took off and went to France. Didn't even really train for that fight. And you see the results. Well, then he comes back and he did train, but ego is what hurt Francis Ngannou.
Now, at this point, I've known Francis for, almost 8 years. Not once, personally, and I know it's different when you're dealing in business and you're dealing with media, haven't even seen a hint of ego. And I could tell you, the vast majority of the guys who are at the top, who come on the show, who have good relationships, you always see a hint of ego. You always do. Never seen a hint of it. Remember, this guy, and I'm going to get into what he's been through and what he's overcome. You never see any of that. But yet, in maybe his lowest moment ever, he's getting completely shit on. It's his ego. He went to France. He has roots there, was training there at the time. He went to France. Who cares where he's going, what he's doing? He shows up for the title fight. And so to blame it all on ego, back in 2018, blame it all on ego, to me was, at the time, if you recall, and I know there's a lot of newer fans, very bizarre. Not on a bad performance, not on a, hey, you didn't show up that day, or you buckled under the pressure, or the lights got to you, or you're still feeling the effects of the title loss to Stipe some 6 months ago. Ego got the best of you. Ego. So remember all of that. And ever since then, they've never been on the same page. And you also have to remember, Dana White is Francis Ngannou's promoter. At the end of the day, that's the guy who's supposed to prop him up. 7 months prior to that press conference, he was telling us that his power was akin to that of a freaking, I don't remember what it was, a Kia Sorento or Ford Focus. I mean, they were promoting him. That's what it was to promote someone, right? That's what it means to promote someone. You tell the world this guy is a freaking truck and he is going to go in there and be the heavyweight. They couldn't have been higher on him, right? They turned him around from December to January to fight for the belt because he was the quintessential promoter's dream in terms of the heavyweight champion. Looked like a cartoon character, looked like a freaking Marvel superhero. Power, speed, strength, the backstory, seemed like a lovable character. 6 months later, it's all about ego. Now, we know everything that happened, but I want to use the press conference on Saturday as our guide. So let's play the press conference on Saturday, and let me tell you about all the messed up things that were said at that press conference. Hit it.
Yes. First question's got to be about the heavyweight fight. So I guess I'll jump right into that. Yes, T-Mobile blew the fight. That wasn't supposed to go up, but it did. This is for the official heavyweight title. You know, we've been working on a new agreement with Francis for like 2 years now. And we had gotten to a point where, he was going to fight John Jones, and many who believe, including me, that he's the best of all time, for the heavyweight championship. And John Jones has been willing and ready and able to fight anybody. He didn't care who it was. Could have been anybody in the heavyweight division. He was ready to go.
Now let's pause it right here if we can. We all know about the history between Dana White and John Jones. It has not been a great one over the years. It is actually reassuring and heartwarming to see Dana White promote John Jones, to say he was ready to go, to say that he is the GOAT, to say that he would fight anyone. Let's not forget, not that long ago, it was, you're asking for too much money. Let's not forget, his demands are crazy. Let's not forget, we'll never let him fight in Las Vegas. And shout out, I believe it was Alan Dawson who asked that question to Dana White. It's based on the mood of the moment. It's based on what you want to spin. It's all spin. And so right now, it behooves them to spin it in favor of John Jones, and it behooves them to say Francis doesn't want the John Jones fight. But let's not forget, not that long ago, it was all against John Jones. Now they're back in the good graces. They signed the new deal. He has agreed to fight anyone. Ariel Helwani is the opponent. But don't forget what we were hearing not that long ago. Let's continue.
And Francis, we offered Francis a deal that would have made him the highest paid heavyweight in the history of the company. More than Lesnar, more than anybody. And he turned the deal down. So, I don't know.
We could pause it right there.
Get to this.
I want to let you know that it's impossible to verify that. But if he's going to say it, all right, let's take him at his word. Even Francis truly doesn't know what is the highest amount ever for a heavyweight, because none of this is public. But, you want to take him at his word, fine, take him at his word. I also want to let you know, and I don't usually do this at the start of a show, I'm going to talk about all of this stuff and give you my opinion on all of this stuff. But what you really want to hear and who you really want to hear from is Francis Ngannou. You want to hear his side of the story. That's what everyone wants to hear. That's the number one interview right now in the sport. Everyone wants to know his side of the story, if what is being said is true, and, what are his plans and what happened and where does he go from here? Well, I can tell you very proudly and very excited to say that tomorrow, Tuesday, we will have a special edition of the MMA Hour at 1 p.m. Eastern, same time, same place, and there'll only be one guest, and it will be the best heavyweight on the planet, Francis Ngannou, as our guest. Live from Cameroon. He's traveling today, couldn't make it today. Traveling on Wednesday, couldn't make it Wednesday, and you know what? He deserves his own show. And we don't do this often, as you know. But we're doing it for him because it is well-deserved and the world wants to hear from him. So I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate him coming on the show live, talking about all this, and we will get to that tomorrow at 1 p.m. So put it on your calendar. 3 shows this week, Monday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, tomorrow, special edition with Francis Ngannou. Let's continue. Oh, thank you. We continue.
Point where I've told you guys this before. If you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here.
That right there, if we could pause, is a bold-faced lie. That is a lie. Don't you think Nathan Diaz didn't want to be there? Do you think Ali Quinta wants to be there? Do you think Luke Rockhold wants to be there? Do you think Francis Ngannou wanted to leave a long time ago? That is not true. He says that, but that is not true. You can't call the UFC right now and say, I don't want to be here, and they'll let you go. You can't do that. So much so, and we'll get to this in a moment, so much so that if your contract is up, if the 5 years are up on your contract, because every UFC contract now has a window of 5 years, there's an extra year tacked on as a matching period. Imagine that. Imagine Jalen Brunson is a free agent, unrestricted free agent. And yet for a whole year, the Mavericks, apologies for the NBA analogy, but I'm just trying to show you how crazy this is, can match any offer that he gets and could drag their feet and could do this whole song and dance. There's a whole extra year tacked on to that. So you can't leave. It's all. George St. Pierre was retired, wanted to fight Oscar De La Hoya for charity in a special exhibition bout. Nope, you can't do that because we still got our period. So that is not true. That is absolutely not true. Do not believe that if any UFC fighter calls the UFC right now, unless they want to, unless they say out of the kindness of their heart, we don't want nothing to do with you, you can't just say, I'm out. Cool? And they'll say, cool back. That doesn't happen. Didn't happen to Francis, couldn't happen to anyone else in the past. Continue.
I think Francis is in a place right now where he doesn't want to take a lot of risk. Feels like he's in a good position where he could fight lesser opponents and make more money.
So that to me, I mean, that's the theme of the whole press conference right now. Francis Ngannou doesn't want to take a lot of risk. He wants to fight lesser opponents for more money. First of all, we all know this is the prize fighting business. The whole point is to make as much money as possible. But to sit there and say essentially this guy is ducking our best, he's ducking John Jones. I mean, again, it's like you watch this and you listen to this and you're like, what world are we living in? What is this sport? What have we become? Francis Ngannou, who I could sit here and talk for 45 minutes about what this guy has overcome, who grew up with nothing, who had to start working when he was, a kid, less than 10 years old, making $1.90 a day digging ditches in Cameroon, who slept in a house among many of his family members in a tiny, tiny house. Calling it a house would be kind. This guy is ducking. This guy who tried to escape multiple times and was caught and put in detention centers and fell off his raft multiple times and was captured and had to go back to start. I mean, I could go through the whole thing right now. He's talked about it on the Rogan podcast. Tim Cowan, who's an incredible writer for ESPN, did an amazing profile on him. This guy who slept in a parking lot, in a stairwell of a parking garage, didn't even know where he was going, didn't have anything to his name, but was happy as can be because he was in Europe, in Paris, learning how to box and then MMA. You think this guy is afraid of anything? Truly, we have not learned that Francis Ngannou is fearless. The stuff that this man has faced, the stuff that this guy has overcome. And so to sit there and be like, yeah, he wants the easy route. First of all, if he does want the easy route, bravo. If you want the highest payday and the easiest fights possible, bravo. We all want that. That's what we all... He just went through every single heavyweight that they put in front of him. And oh, by the way, has been asking for this very fight for over 2 years. How do I know that? We have proof. Let's go to the video evidence. Let's go to the factual evidence. Let's go all the way back to May of 2020 when all of this began between him and John Jones. Excuse me. First thing on the docket. After his win at UFC, 249. That's when all this starts, right? Francis Ngannou says, hello, Johnny. Are you still there? Okay, this is when it all starts. Remember, and this is when John was asking for that money, 10 million, all that stuff. Jones responds. They're going back and forth here. saying that Francis is boring and has no heart, all that stuff. You could see it all up there. We go then back to May 20th of 2020, saying, oh yeah, I watched some tapes of you. I see you running. This is the Dominic Reyes fight. This is 2020. Oh, remember this show, Ariel and the Bad Guy? I'm talking about how we want to see John move up to heavyweight. Everybody is calling your bluff, my friend. Don't let the people down. May 21st, 2020. Sound like a guy who doesn't want this fight? Sound like a guy who wasn't calling for this fight? May 27th, I speak to Francis Ngannou about this very fight. May 27th, 2020, 2.5 years ago. Here's what he said. Do you feel like it's dead? Like, do you think that it's actually not going to be, discussed again? There's no chance of this fight happening between you and John Jones?
He has to be discussed. I think this fight is so big. I mean, I always, to be honest, I never talk about it. People always ask me about it, and I kind of like deflect the question, but I knew that is something was going to happen. I didn't think that we're going to be talking about this fight at this point, but I knew that it's going to happen at some point. So yes, now than ever, I believe this fight is going to happen. Maybe not now, but it's going to happen. There's no way that this fight is not happening.
Why did you feel like it was going to happen, that it was inevitable?
It's such a big fight. It's such a big challenge. I mean, either for me or for John, it's just a big challenge. And a fan has been so excited about this fight. I mean, if they care about fans a little bit, there's no way this fight is not going to happen.
Sound like a guy that doesn't want the fight dating back then? Sound like a guy who wants easy fights? John Jones wasn't even a heavyweight at that point. He's trying to coerce the GOAT, who I do think is the GOAT. If we want to strip aside all the PD stuff, the resume is unmatched. Almost a year later, Francis Ngannou becomes the heavyweight champion of the world. He beats Stipe Miocic. He does so in very convincing fashion. At the post-fight press conference, the same guy who on Saturday told you this man wants easy fights, he had this to say about the possibility of John Jones fighting Francis Ngannou. Take a listen.
The idea of a John Jones fight seems awfully exciting right now. And John came out, tweeted, said, show me the money. What appeals to you most? Because it seems like that would be an amazing super fight.
If I'm John Jones and I'm home watching this fight, I start moving to 85.
You think that's a fight that you'd like to put together next? I mean, I know we don't matchmake, but that sure does seem exciting.
Listen, I can sit here all day and tell you, what show me the money mean? I tell you guys this all the time. If you can say you want to fight somebody, but do you really want to?
Yeah, of course. God forbid you want to get paid for mega fights. God forbid you want to, reap the benefits of over a decade's worth of fights and reaching the pinnacle, and it's a super fight. God forbid. And again, remember, that's the same guy you just saw on Saturday telling you, John Jones ready to go. He wanted to fight anyone. But 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, it was like, he should go back down to 185, or not back down. He should go to 185 because that guy, Francis Ngannou, is a problem. You see the difference? When you want to promote someone, you say things like, that guy is a problem. When you don't want to promote them, when you want to damage them on the way out, you say, he wants easy fights. He doesn't want to be here. He turned down the biggest deal ever. And I see it, by the way. I see it. To everyone who's saying, why are you bringing out these so-called receipts? It's because I've seen it for the past 36 hours. John Jones, made Francis Ngannou run from the UFC. Francis Ngannou's scared. Francis Ngannou quit. That did not happen, my friends, okay? This is life. This is legacy. This is about standing for what you believe in. 4 days after that, I asked Francis Ngannou about fighting John Jones. This is what he had to say. If it was up to you, though, your top choice, would it be John Jones?
Yeah. If it was up to me, yes. John Jones is a good one, Just take the best heavyweight of all the time out, then take the pound of pound, the number 1 pound of pound guy out. It will be great in the resume. It will look good.
Shout out to his smoke alarm, which was going ham during that interview. So that's Francis Ngannou, days after winning the belt, saying, yes, John Jones, let's go. And if you want to know just how, gutsy this guy is, just how courageous he is, just how unafraid he is, A month later, he tweets this. I'll take care of John Jones first, then come after Tyson Fury. Wow, he wants to go over to boxing now too? Sounds like a guy who's scared to me. Sounds like a guy who wants easy fights, right? That's April 28th. May 1st, John Jones and Francis Ngannou go back and forth on Twitter. Some of these are deleted. Shout out to GC for some way, somehow unearthing some of these. Pray you knock me out, because if you don't, I'm going to break you, and that's a promise. Please don't make me laugh. They're going back and forth. That's May 1st. They're going back and forth. More. You're a decision fighter. Again, does this sound like guys who don't want to fight? No. But obviously guys who want to get paid, as all fighters do. I'm sorry to break the news. Fighters want to get paid. It's called prize fighting. The window is small. You know who I learned that from? Dana White, who told us time and again the window is small. And you learn, as Sean Strickland reminded us on Saturday night, when you're done, no one cares about you anymore. Then we get to January of 2022. We get to Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane. We get to Francis Ngannou turning down multiple deals and gets to the last fight of his contract. The Ciryl Gane fight was the last fight of his contract. He bets on himself, injured knee and all. If Gane wins, worst gamble of all time. Fight's looking horribly, right? He loses the first 2 rounds, comes back some way, somehow, turns into Mark Coleman, Daniel Cormier, guts it out, beats Gane, who's an incredible fighter, who deserves none of the blame in all of this. He's a guy looking for an opportunity himself, and I think has always handled the Francis stuff with class. But, you know, in this case, he was like the guy that the UFC was putting in position to try to knock off. Francis, just like Khamzat was the guy put in the position to knock off Nathan. It didn't happen. Francis wins. Holy shit. I mean, remember that almost a year ago? January 22nd? Insane. This is what Francis said at the post-fight press conference. Take a look.
Can I ask you simply, do you feel like you still want to be a UFC fighter?
Well, it's been a long time and a lot of things been going on. So at this point, I think my feeling doesn't matter. You know, I've been feel a lot of things in the past year. I've been expressed my willingness to stay in the UFC, to have a contract, just to be respected. And the only reason why we are here, I think, is because at some point I wasn't respected. You know, he could have taken way less to get this deal done, but he went to like a power position and get everybody frustrated, get me frustrated, get me lost the feeling, the desire of doing things. You know, I get in this sport. I didn't grow up dreaming about this sport. I just get into it because it was fun and all those stuff. Then you get to the point that you kind of like find another side of the sport which is not funny, which is frustrating. It's kind of like mess with your mind, you know. So. But I'm pretty good, trying to like stay focused, just think about the sport and nothing around it, and hope that things gonna go well.
I show you all of this to let you know that his narrative, that his stance has never changed. Even sitting up there at a UFC press conference, minutes after beating Gane to retain the title, stance never changed, told us it wasn't about the money, told us it was about respect, told us it was about freedom. Stance never changed. Not about, you know, this fight, that fight, ducking this. Now, I can see the naysayers saying, you know, the zombies saying, oh, he's telling you that because he doesn't want these fights. If you believe that at this point, then, you know, shame on you. And you'll convince you. There's a lot of people out there convincing themselves of a lot of stupid shit these days. Go ahead. Believe that. If you want the truth, you're hearing it right now. 2 days after that, he was on this show. He had more to say about all this, just to show you that his stance has never changed. Take a listen. You say to the world, what do you want? What is it about then? Freedom is, but like, what are you looking for? Is there anything specific that you can share? I know you don't have to go through your whole entire, like, you know, life goal here, but what is it that's really bugging you about what they're offering and what maybe they're not offering?
The term of the contract, everything that they put into, they hold you like in captivity, like you can't do anything, you have no right. The contract is one-sided. Although you still don't have nothing, You don't even have a health insurance while you're doing this, putting your body on the line to put on the show, risking everything. There's a lot of things, man. We have no insurance, nothing, like no guarantee, which I understand for independent contractor, but treat me as such then. If I am, I mean, whether I'm going to be an employer or an independent contractor, but make it very clear in the contract. It's very mixed up.
Look at the things that he is talking about. And I think that goes down as one of the most important interviews in the history of this show and of my career. Talking about things like independent contractor, talking about things like insurance, protection, freedom. I think some people think that this guy doesn't know what he's doing, what he's talking about. He very much knows what he's talking about. And the fact that he has stuck to his guns for 2 years, for those 2 years. See, Dana goes up there and dismisses it like, we tried to make a deal with this guy and we were going to offer him, more money than anyone. And so it's all very reminiscent of Nathan Diaz, by the way, because they offered Nathan Diaz life-changing money too. But there's something about freedom. There's something about, and when he talks about, captivity and all that, that's coming from a guy who knows what it feels like to be captive. He's been captive himself with nothing to his name, with nothing to gamble. Do you understand? Like when he is saying these things, when he's using those words, this man knows what it feels like to be shackled. And yet people just want to dismiss it like, oh, he doesn't want to take this fight. These fans drive me nuts. Understand, again, I get it. For all of you, it's just a vice. It's just sports. It's an escape. But I can't sit here and do this job and let them smear someone with his credibility, with what he's been through, what he's overcome. One more clip from the show a year ago. Are you willing to walk away if necessary?
I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get what I want.
Was it a good deal or did it not even get to that point?
It's good deal is very relative.
Good point. Good deal for you?
Good deal. No good deal for me. Yeah, and the money was tempting. It was good, but this is not just about money. By this moment, I think it's a lot more than money. Like just the money cannot fix the situation. I do believe that. And this is the thing. Like there is two things. Freedom doesn't work with money. You give up one for one. Whether you want a freedom, whether you want money, you give up one. And if this is the end, man, I'm happy. From where I came from, I have done a lot.
Man.
Some people might not see that, but I have done it, and I'm very happy about that. I'm proud of myself, man. Like, that might be my ego, but I'm proud of myself, of what I have achieved.
This could very well be his comments tomorrow. It's the same stuff for the past year. That was a year ago. And he's talking about freedom. He's trying to tell you guys that it's more than just the money. How do you not walk away impressed by that? It's not just about money. It's about freedom. It's about certain things in the contract. It's about certain restrictions. All that stuff. And just in case you thought he still didn't want to fight Jon Jones throughout all of this, as recently as July, he's tweeting about Jon Jones. This is after Israel Adesanya's title defense. Since Jones been sitting back and talking shit, Izzy has defended his title at least 5 times. Well done, champ. He's still talking about Jon Jones. This guy doesn't want to fight Jon Jones? Really? The guy who has overcome everything, the guy who has beaten all the odds to just even get here? And if you look at his story, you know that boxing is that big itch that he never got to scratch. That was the original dream. Tyson was his hero. That's the reason why he tried to get to Paris. And so maybe boxing is on the horizon. And would you not say it's pretty damn courageous for someone to go into a different sport and fight if it is truly the likes of Deontay Wilder, if it is the likes of Tyson Fury one day, where he's at a disadvantage? That's a guy who wants easy fights. That's a guy, like right now, Bellator ain't talking to him. PFL ain't talking to him. They might, and I can assure you they will try to as of this week. But if this guy is truly going down the boxing route and he's putting all of this aside He's saying you could keep the money. You could keep the favorable matchup against Jones, which it would be for him. You could keep all of that. I'm going to try to do this with no restrictions and truly be free. How is that not something to applaud? And so you could sit there at the press conference and do what happened on Saturday and try to damage him in the people's eyes on the way out. Say he wanted easy fights. He didn't want to be here. It's a waste of time, the dinners, all that crap that you heard. Or you can act like every other sports executive and be like, you know what? We tried. Boy, did we try. Well, I should say Hunter tried. He went out to a bunch of dinners. They have a great relationship. We just couldn't come to terms on a deal. He wants things that we can't offer him. We just couldn't come to terms. And this happens in sports and it happens in business. He was a great champion for us. His win over Stipe was incredible. His win over Gane was incredible. It's been a great run. And we've promoted some big fights with him involved, and he's given us some great highlights, and I wish him the best. And if he does want to go out there and box, God bless. And if it doesn't work out, maybe we can revisit this. But right now, he wants to chase another dream, go down another path, and guess what? We're lucky because we have a great roster that we have, dare I say, a younger version of Francis Ngannou and Ariel Helwani, a guy who was, fighting him exactly a year ago and, made it to the final round and went to the judges' scorecards, blah, 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 blah. And he's going to fight Jon Jones. And we think that's a great matchup, but we're going to promote the hell out of that. And you should all tune in because Jon Jones coming back at heavyweight is box office enough. And you get to see Ariel Helwani, who looked fantastic back home. And you could do this very easily and in a very normal, classy way, but none of that exists. None of that exists. And so right before we went on the air, Francis Ngannou tweeted a clip of Dr. Martin Luther King, free at last, free at last. That's where his head is at. Sometimes it doesn't matter. You just want to be free. Dana mentioned something in that press conference about, this is the second time we couldn't come to terms with someone on a deal. It's not the second time. It's not. And he mentioned Fedor as being number one. I mean, we just saw it with Nathan Diaz. They offered him a lot of money to stay, especially after he beats Tony Ferguson in this crazy turn of events. Maybe not if he loses to Khamzat. He walked away too. And maybe they revisit with him and they think there's more, money to be had. I can assure you, Francis wins his boxing debut, they'll come back to the table as well. And I reread that ESPN article last night, that great profile on Francis that came out right before the Ariel Helwani fight. I reread it because I wanted to just remind myself of how much this guy has been through and what he's overcome and how insane it is to question his character, how insane it is to question his drive, his courage, his motivation. And if there's one dude on the planet who should go for the money, it's that guy who at one time was sleeping in the forest with just a plastic sheet on top of himself. At one time was sleeping in a shack. At one time was sleeping in a parking garage. Like if there's one guy that we should be rooting for to get as much money as possible, it's that guy. But we're going to shit on him because he's not giving us our Jon Jones fight and giving up whatever dreams and freedoms that he wants. There was one part of that story that hit me right in the heart, that I was like, this is exactly who he is. And we should know better than to believe this nonsense. And so I'm going to read it. This is when he was in jail. There were 10 to 20 people in one big cell. Some of them his raft mates, bunk beds lining the perimeter, breakfast, shower time, recreation, lunch, 30 minutes of television, dinner, bedtime. He did so many push-ups, he didn't bother to count. The guards tried to break him, to get him to admit to an accusation or agree to a story that would ruin his hopes for asylum. Their job was to frustrate him, but he'd come too far to fall for such amateurism. He'd withstood far worse. Throughout his 14-month journey, whenever he doubted himself and thought about heading back to his village, he repeated the words that kept him going. Quote, "Never underestimate somebody who has hope." End quote. This was hope repaying its debt. Never underestimate somebody who has hope. Today, because they are waiving that extra year, that matching period, you become a free agent in December. He did, but he still had to bring any offer to them for a full year. Because they are supposedly waiving it, it was said on camera, Francis Ngannou has hope. Just like he had hope back then as those guards were trying to break him, just like he had hope throughout the entire process as he's crossing over the Black Sea, as he's living in a parking garage. He has hope again. How do you not celebrate that? How do you not applaud that? How do you shit on that guy? Check yourself if you're one of those shitting on that guy. And I know there will be some, and there will be some people saying, oh, you're defending him, blah, 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 blah. How do you read that, knowing what we know about this guy and what he's overcome, and then listen to that press conference and not want to pull whatever hair is on your head? This man now has hope, and that's all he's ever wanted. And that has been the engine to get him from Cameroon to here, to where there are boxing promoters who are going to want to work with him, are other MMA promoters that are going to want to work with him. This is the best heavyweight on the planet. This is the reigning defending UFC heavyweight champion, now a free man. And you could say what you want about his decisions, about leaving money on the table, about all that stuff. This is a free man who is representing himself, who had, CA by his side, who had Markel Martin by his side, who the UFC, used to employ, and then tried to ruin him because of the work that he did with Francis. And now he's essentially out of the game. You see Kevin Lee signed with Dominance. Dominance tried to sign Francis a gazillion times. And Francis is like, no, I'm just going to do this on my own. For the most part, he's got people, who he works with in an advisory role, but this guy is doing this on his own. How do you not applaud that? I know fans want, everyone under the same umbrella. I know you all want all the fights to be in one nice little neat package for you so that you can watch and not worry about guys going here and there, much like we've been told in the past happens in boxing. But you know what's the difference? The difference is in boxing, Francis Ngannou gets paid a hell of a lot more than he does now and has a hell of a lot more freedom, more importantly, than his equivalent has in our sport. And so I'll root for that. At this point, maybe it's because I've seen how the sausage has been made. Maybe because I've seen enough of the guys who have been left with nothing, and we're going to see a hell of a lot more, and we're seeing heartbreaking stories begin to mount. I will always root for that. And I'm aware for those that, are just hoping to have their escape, I'm aware that might not, mesh with what you want out of this sport. You want to believe that this guy was ducking, that this guy was running, that he wanted nothing to do with John Jones, that he turned down money because he was scared of John Jones or any fighter, a rematch. Who was he scared of? He beat Cyril. He beat Stipe. He left the UFC. He turned down this amazing deal because he was afraid. This is what you're going to believe? This is how they view us? This is how simple-minded they think we are, that because he was afraid, that he wanted easy fights. He wanted easy fights. He can't handle the pressure anymore. What are we talking about here? I mean, really? And that's why I didn't even use the word, release in any of this. Okay, they are waiving their right to match for up to a year. Francis Ngannou wasn't released from the UFC. He was a free agent. His contract expired. Get it right. Free agent. Contract expired. That 1 year matching period thing blows my mind. Imagine I leave ESPN and ESPN says, hey, for a full year, we could decide if we're going to match any offer, keep you here, or you're just going to have to sit out and wait for that so that we don't have to, engage in any of this. What? That's crazy. Every contract should end and then that's it. In like every other walk of life. And so now here we are. I hope you tried to understand why this stuff blows my mind, because I'm not trying to sit here and, criticize the journalists. I'm not trying to do this thing because I know it's hard being in there. I know it's hard being in that room. I've been there myself, and it would drive me nuts when people on Twitter would be like, why don't you ask this? Or who has the balls to ask that? The questions are fine. This thing about MMA media is bullshit. For the most part, it's fine. Does he try to intimidate? Does he try to bully? Does he try to change the narrative? All the time. But it's about the things that are being said. That's the problem. None of it's going to change. I just hope that you know that you can come on this show and get the actual truth. Francis Ngannou ain't scared of no one. This is a negotiation that happened and they couldn't come to terms. That's it. He wanted some things that they couldn't give. And maybe they couldn't give him those things because, they don't want to set the precedent. One part of that press conference, Dana White says, ain't no one boxing here. They don't want to set that precedent. They don't want to open that door. It was timely to do it when Conor McGregor got the opportunity to do it because they had just sold the company. This would have been a huge revenue generator for them. It made a lot of sense. Doesn't make sense anymore. They've got the ESPN deal. They're very successful with pay-per-view right now. Everything's firing on all cylinders. So they don't want to set that precedent. All right. So it happens. I was bummed when the Knicks couldn't re-sign Jeremy Lin. I didn't think it's because he was afraid to play at Madison Square Garden. You didn't hear any of that nonsense. Why can't it just be like, hey, we couldn't come to terms, and that's it? Why does it have to be, damage the guy, smear his name, all that crap? And so, interestingly enough, I asked all of you, what do you think is going to happen with Francis, and where do you want to see him compete? What an unbelievable response to this poll. Let me pull it up. 97,000 people weighed in. I think that might be number one in terms of, votes. 97,487. Bellator, 15%. PFL, 28%. BKFC, 13%. They've been vocal. Boxing, 44%. Incredible. 44%. Now, the reason I didn't put one, I wanted to put one in there, but for some reason, New York Rick, maybe you can ask Elon next time you speak to him if they can put more than 4 options in these polls. Because I was going to put one, but I didn't know who to drop,
I think that's coming. Don't worry.
You think so?
Unlimited characters, unlimited poll options. We'll get there. Don't worry.
Unlimited characters? That's big news. Is that being discussed?
Yeah.
They are really expanding the characters. I'm joking about the unlimited polls, but yes, they are expanding the characters to quite a bit.
Like to more than 280?
Yeah, like
4,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're joking.
No, it's
seriously.
literally 4,000.
They'll do it like a more or less situation where it will be the 280 and then you can click for more. So you're not forced into large walls of text.
Mm-hmm.
You can expand it basically, but that's coming.
Wow.
Love that we went on this track.
Yes, this is great. I mean, this is huge news. And so there are some thoughts on Francis Ngannou. Again, we'll be joined by him tomorrow in a special edition of the show at 1 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday, January 17th. And, you could believe whatever you want to believe. I tried to show you the truth. UFC 285 is a great main event. I'm looking forward to it. Jon Jones is back. People are excited about that. It's fascinating theater. Jon Jones versus any heavyweight, by the way, is fascinating theater. Against Ciryl Gane is a tough matchup. Give Jon a lot of credit for that. Ciryl is very good. And I remember saying after that Ngannou fight, like Ciryl reminds me of the kind of guy who fights for the belt once, stumbles, and eventually gets the belt. He could very well be en route to getting the belt. He's less than 2 months away from getting the belt. But in my opinion, Francis Ngannou is the lineal heavyweight champion of the world. And so we'll see what he does. If he goes and fights Deontay Wilder, that's a big freaking deal. If he fights Tyson Fury after Usyk, that's a big freaking deal. If he fights any boxer, it's a big freaking deal. How do you not root for this guy? And how do you believe that nonsense when I just gave you 2+ years worth of evidence that this guy wanted the fight, but also wanted some other things? It wasn't just about being afraid, and it wasn't just about the money. He wanted other things as well. And listen, that takes courage. Different type of courage, obviously. I mean, like traveling, 3,000 miles in the desert and going on a raft and trying to, survive living in the forest and in a parking garage. Like that's true courage. But this is a different kind of courage. This is business courage. This is legacy courage. I have the utmost respect for the guy, and I would say all these things if he wasn't coming on the show tomorrow. And I know the real ones know that.
Well said.
Hey, thanks, Frank. I appreciate that. Later in the show, I want to get New York Rick and GC's thoughts on all of this. Also can talk about Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman. Kind of chuckled a little bit. You know, people love to say, like, what's the one thing when you have people like Dylan Dennis here or other crazy people like, oh man, you really screwed the UFC with that Brock Lesnar announcement. Forgetting that there was so much more before that. But anyway, like that's the big thing that they left to hang on, like this big announcement. Meanwhile, you know, these massive fights like Leon and Kamaru 3, huge, you know, UK pay-per-view, return to the UK for a pay-per-view show, first time since 2016, just gets announced like a throwaway comment at a press conference. Come on. This argument that they have these big plans all the time, like, you know, you're really screwing their plans. It's like a throwaway comment. Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards 3, one of the biggest fights of the year, just gets thrown away like that at the press conference. Oh yeah. Oh, by the way, forgot to mention that fight's. Oh, and by the way, Fazia versus Gaethje too. Like nothing. That's it. That was the big announcement. It's a crazy world we live in, my friends. Crazy, crazy world. I can't wait. You know, it now becomes one of the biggest stories of the year, along with Nathan Diaz. Let's not forget about him, the one who did this first. Where does Francis go? Where does Nathan go? Are they both going to box? Wouldn't that speak volumes, right? Two of the biggest stars in the UFC saying, you know what? I want to try this. Something I'm, you know, less well-versed in. I haven't done once professionally. I want to try this instead. Doesn't happen often. How many sports do you see that in? I guess Michael Jordan did it. Was a AA star for a bit. And then he went back to the NBA. And maybe that happens as well. I don't think it's a crazy thought for Diaz. And I don't think it's a crazy thought for Ngannou as well. But now I can't wait to see how this plays out. Can't wait to see how it plays out. And again, can't wait to talk to him tomorrow and appreciate his time very much. That'll be tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, special Choo Choo Tuesday edition of the program. Francis Ngannou joining us live from Cameroon. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can listen to what he has to say, and that shall be in about 23 hours' time.